Welcome to the Big 12 Insiders, your Big 12 sports show. Here's your host, Brien Hanley.
Hey, everybody, what's going on? This is your man, Big B, Brien Hanley. Appreciate everybody being in here. Welcome back to Big 12 Insiders, man. Basketball, NCAA tournament, to me, like I said, as far as playoffs are concerned, it is the pinnacle. Outside of the NFL playoffs, which I kind of put that on a separate tier, this is next for me when it comes to actual playoffs and what I watch and what I participate in. This is next. It literally captures the entire country for a month. That's what everybody is glued to. NFL, nothing really going on. There's no combine. The draft isn't here. Baseball, although for the most part, people don't pay that much attention to baseball. I know there's baseball lovers out there, and you're going to get in there, I pay attention to baseball. Okay. For the most part, and TV ratings will tell you, people pay attention to opening day, and then they tune back in around late August. That's kind of how baseball rolls. That's just facts. It's not my opinion. That's just facts. But there's really nothing going on because the NBA Finals haven't started yet. The playoffs haven't started. So for a month, people are captivated by this tournament. And I think it's a great thing. You know, they've kind of carved out their niche. They dive into it head first, and it's awesome. It's not good. It's not great. This tournament is awesome. But part of it that makes it awesome is the Cinderella story. People love a Cinderella. They want to see a team, make a little run that hasn't been there, that the small school wins, and we all love it. We all love that. However, has that been taken away? Because we really haven't seen that the last few years. So we're going to dive into that today about, is the Cinderella, has March Madness lost the Cinderella factor, and is it ever coming back? We're going to dive into that head first here today, people. So appreciate you all being in here. Before we get started, remember, like, follow, subscribe. Again, always get in that comment section. Tell me what you do and you don't like, and hit that notification bell so you know exactly when Big 12 Insiders comes out. I almost said something else. So appreciate all you guys being in here. Let's dive into this. So first things first, there are no Cinderellas in the Sweet 16 this year. There really wasn't many upsets this year. When it comes down to it, like how many upsets? I mean, McNeese State, but other than that, I don't think there were games out there that you just thought, oh, man, this is crazy. And there definitely wasn't any in the second round. This was one of those years where, the term chalk was out there. And I guess you could say maybe Arkansas beating St. John's. But even when you really look at that game, it's not that Arkansas doesn't have good players. They do. It's not that Arkansas doesn't have a great coach. They do. And it's not that Arkansas was going to get, I would guarantee you that Arkansas's NIL is much bigger than what St. John's has. And while St. John's had a better season, okay, great. They didn't play in the same conference. I'm not bad-mouthing the Big East. I think it's a good conference. But the SEC was much better. It was much deeper. It was. It's just a fact. And when you talk about those type of athletes, they kept saying it on the broadcast. So, there really wasn't any Cinderellas this year that we could just stand on, that are especially standing in the Sweet 16, that you could say, you know what? Like my wife bought a sweatshirt from one of the teams, a St. Peter's team from a few years ago. She bought a sweatshirt. She wears it today. She loves it. She's proud because she said, you know what? Give them a little bit of money. Support that. Even though she doesn't know anybody on the team, the coach, doesn't even know where it is. She said, I watch March Madness and I love it. I'm buying a sweatshirt. And that's kind of what March Madness is, isn't it? You know what I'm saying? But when it actually comes down to it, do we really want Cinderellas? And we're going to discuss it. We're going to break that down because our eyeballs said that we don't, when there actually was Cinderellas in the Final Four. So here's the thing. NIL in the transfer portal, in my opinion, have kind of taken away from Cinderellas. Mid-major teams are now a stomping ground for big schools, bigger conference schools to come in, pluck those players away, and build you a team that can make a run in the tournament. Why do you say? Well, you don't win with freshmen anymore. Now, Duke is trying to prove all of that wrong this year with freshmen and sophomores, but, their guy happens to be the best player in the country, and it's not that close. If we're really being honest, Cooper Flagg is that much better. And they got a couple of guys that are really good. So maybe they'll, when it gets down to it, maybe just the talent. Also, they have a great coach. Let's not talk about John Shire. He's a great coach. But maybe the talent will win the day. We'll see how that works out. For Kentucky, you remember all those years of one and dones that John Calipari had? They would always be really good. And they won it once. But other than that, especially near the end, they couldn't even get out of the second round. So you win in this tournament, and that's kind of always been the case. I mean, there's going to be some outliers here and there, but you win with experienced guards. That's what you win with. That's how you – and just experienced players in general. You win. Guys that are older, a little bit more mature, can handle the pressure. You can win with those guys, which is why Cinderellas, used to win in the NCAA tournament because it was older teams. I mean, there wasn't Cinderellas for the most part. Maybe there was one outlier out there somewhere, but for the most part, those teams had juniors and seniors. A lot of times it was senior-laden teams that would make these runs to the Sweet 16, have these upsets of these big programs. Experienced guys that had been there, been through some wars within their conference. So when it came down to playing bigger competition and better competition, they could handle it. Well, if your best players and those older guys now are being plucked away, where's the opportunity? Now, look, we don't have to like it. That's just the rules these days. We don't have to like it. We don't have to agree with it. But you do need to play in it because that's the way the rules are. I don't think there's anybody out there that's got a sane mind that doesn't think that there needs to be some fine-tuning to the transfer portal, NIL, and all of that. But that's a different conversation for a different day. And trust me, throughout this offseason, we will probably hammer that to nauseam where you'll be saying, Big B, stop talking about it. But that's where we are currently. And we can only live in reality. We can't live in, a hypothetical world. That's not how reality works. So here's where we are, and this is what's happening. And the truth of the matter is that it's changed the tournament. It has. Like I said, I was in Vegas, and you looked at some of these spreads, and you looked at these games like, do I really want to pick upsets here? And we didn't. And it turned out to work. It's like, yeah, man, there's none of these games really stand out as one that you looked at and thought, oh, yeah, they're going to win. And even the McNeese State over Clemson. I mean, a lot of us lost because we took Clemson, but it wasn't one that you looked at and thought, oh, yeah, for sure. A 5-12 game that 100%. I think the only one that I think everybody and I think a lot of people thought, okay, they're going to win was Colorado State over Memphis because Memphis was down 2 starters, probably their best player and their point guard, experienced point guard. Well, name a team that's going to be down 2 starters and your experienced point guard that you're going to go win a game in the NCAA tournament. I mean, we just saw Iowa State get their head kicked in. Now, granted, Keyshawn Gilbert was not their point guard, but again, an experienced starter, their second leading scorer. And they played against the team, and they just got their head kicked in. So you're not really going to win a whole lot of games when you're without those type of people. But that's kind of the way this tournament is going right now. Is it a good thing? Those are 2 questions that I have. Is it a good thing? And can it be fixed? Here's the thing. Now, whether you like Stephen A. Smith or you don't, I heard him say something yesterday on First Take that it kind of resonated with me a little bit. is that he said if things continue to go this way, this will be the end of college basketball. Now, granted, that statement in itself is just hyperbole. That, obviously it's not going to be the end of college basketball. But he went on to explain it. And what he said was, because Seth Greenberg's eyes got huge when he said it, because I don't think he could believe he said something like that. But he went on to explain himself, and he said it's the allure of the Cinderella that people tune in for, that they watch the first round, the opening weekend of the NCAA tournament, from March Madness, for that. And if they lose the identity of a Cinderella, that Cinderellas can't win, will it be as exciting anymore? And, he's right. Again, you don't have to disagree or agree or disagree. You don't have to like Stephen A. Smith. That's not the point of any of this. But what he said and how he explained it, I don't disagree. I think he's right. We do turn in for that the first weekend. We want to see those upsets, even if it costs us money, which nobody wants to lose money. And especially you're talking to one of the cheaper men in America. So nobody wants to lose the money, but we love seeing those upsets, man. We love it. We do. People talk, and you talk about it for years. Like, those coaches get interviewed. They go on like Good Morning America, all of this stuff. It's good for their program, raises the profile a little bit. We've seen coaches get jobs because of that. We've seen players get elevated because of it. It's good for everything. But when you start to lose that identity of what you are, that's problematic. It's really problematic. And we're in a system now that I don't know that we can turn it around. I really don't know. And like I said, 2 questions. Is it a good thing? And can we fix it? First off, I don't think it's a good thing. And I just explained why, because I feel like the tournament, you go down a couple of years, it's going to start losing its identity. Now, people will still show up. They'll still watch. But will it still be the same? Man, we love a Cinderella and they can win. If they can never win. If they're never going to win anymore, then what are we talking about? And remember how excited everybody was talking about McNeese State. And everybody was singing their praises when they beat Clemson. The next round of the tournament, they got their head kicked in. They had no chance. That game was over in 5 minutes against Purdue. 5 minutes. And how many times have we seen that Cinderella upset somebody in the first round, get momentum, get confidence, and end up in the Sweet 16, sometimes in the Elite 8? So if it loses that identity, I still believe people may watch. I don't know, man. It'll still be a big deal because it's March Madness. But will we still have that same good, feeling about it how we had in previous years? And this is the first year that we've really started to notice, okay, there's no Cinderellas. What's going on here? Now, can it be fixed? I don't know. I mean, I'd like to be able to sit here with the crystal ball and tell you that it can be fixed. But again, until there becomes some rules and regulations with the transfer portal and NIL, I don't see it being fixed. I mean, how can it be fixed? And it's not schools' fault. They're just operating within what they're allowed to do. Now, granted, there's some of you, and you would be right, that are going to blame the schools and say, well, hold on, Big B. The presidents and the athletic directors of these schools are the ones that need to put some regulation and work together to put some regulation in it, which we know that's never going to happen because greed is involved. And when greed is involved and there are no rules, you're not going to sign any rules. It's kind of like Congress. I think most people would say Congress, and again, I don't want to be too political, but I think most people in America would say Congress needs to have term limits. It's probably a reasonable thing to have. However, the people that have to decide on whether there's term limits are currently in Congress. So you think they're going to pass a rule or a law that they're going to get to fire themselves? Yeah, it's not going to happen. Just not going to happen. So, people talk about that all the time. It's not going to happen. This is the same thing. You're telling athletic directors and school presidents that they need to put put rules and laws in place that are going to limit the amount of money that they can make, yeah, that's not going to happen. Not going to happen. There needs to be a governing body, which you thought the NCAA was that governing body, but once they started getting sued, look, we can blame the NCAA for a lot of this stuff, and they would be at fault. However, when they tried to put some rules and regulations in, they kept getting sued and kept losing. So they're like, okay, you guys have at it. Have at it. You wanted this, you got it. And so I don't know if it can be fixed, people. I really don't know. Until that happens, I would just say no, So until a governing body comes in or they decide that they want to be governed, which, like I said, I don't know that that's going to happen. I don't see it being fixed anytime soon, which is sad because, these mid-major programs, they do the best they can. But again, you get a guy that's obviously not being highly recruited at the time, goes to a smaller school, goes there for 2 years, then all of a sudden, I don't know, just out of the blue, whoever you want to name, I won't pull a name because it'll sound like I'm bad-mouthing that school for plucking somebody, but they come along from a big-time conference and take them. Hey, you average 14 points as a sophomore there. You know what? Here's some money. Come here. You beat a starter. We need you. Okay. I always wanted to play big-time college basketball. Now I have my opportunity. Can't blame the kid. Can't blame the school. It's just the way we are, man. It's just where we are, unfortunately. And it's not just basketball. Football's the same way. Although I would say this, there are a lot more hits than there are misses when it comes to basketball, because football, there's so many moving parts on a football field, and what you have access to as far as weight training and dietary and all of these things in basketball, the difference isn't that much from big time programs to little programs in basketball as it is to football. That difference is gigantic. It is gigantic. And how do you know that? Look at the size of the players. There's big guys, there's little guys. That's what they always say. This team is much bigger than this smaller school. That's the difference. When it comes to basketball, not near as many moving parts on a basketball court. And if you're a good basketball player and you're the best guy, you can be the best guy on the court, you can control a basketball game. You can't do that in football. It just doesn't work that way. So that's why I say there's such a big discrepancy when we talk about basketball and football when it comes to big schools and small schools. But hey, if I'm somewhere, in Indiana State, for instance, and a big-time program comes calling, I go, especially if they're going to pay me some money, I'm absolutely going, because, again, my goal was to always play big-time college basketball. Now I have that opportunity. Can't blame anybody. It's just where we are, unfortunately. So I don't know how it gets fixed. Here's the thing that I would talk about. And I went back. I thought, let's look and actually see. I can get up here and run my fat mouth and talk about all this stuff, but where's the proof in the pudding, Big B? Well, let's go. I just went back to 2022. I said, is it really been a problem? Well, here's what it was in 2022. And I just did Sweet 16. First round games, because, we could go back to that if we want to. But I believe, and let's just go back another realm. You go back and you look, and it's like there wasn't all these upsets, and especially in the Sweet 16, it's like, where were the teams? Providence is in a big-time conference. You go down the list, and I'm looking, and I'm like, well, St. Mary's, that was the one squad in 2022. St. Mary's. You know what they did? Heck, because they beat Murray State in the second round to go to the Sweet 16. Then they beat Purdue. They ended up in the Elite Eight. That would be the definition of a Cinderella. Other than St. Mary's, in 2020, there was nobody else. No other, team that you would say was a mid-major Cinderella. Nobody else. Because Gonzaga, I know they play in the WCC. I get that, but Gonzaga is not a mid-major in basketball. We all know that. So no, they're not considered a mid-major. Most sane people understand that. So not going to consider them. But St. Mary's was it in 2022. But the Final Four: Villanova, Houston, Kansas, and Miami. Okay, Kansas ended up winning the title that year over Villanova. So, not what I would say would be, I don't know. There was no Cinderellas outside of St. Mary's. But you remember St. Mary's, or not St. Mary's, St. Peter's, excuse me, St. Peter's. Great story. Like I said, my wife bought a sweatshirt. So great story. You look at 2023, okay? Now, this is the year that we had some, is because in the Sweet 16, San Diego State, I would count as a mid-major. Absolutely. Princeton was in the Sweet 16 that year. Florida Atlantic was in the Sweet 16 that year. Xavier plays in the Big East, so no, they're not. Gonzaga, we just talked about. So we had 3 teams, including Princeton, people, as a 15 seed. That's the kind of March Madness that people were talking about. Okay? Going on. The Final Four, it was Florida Atlantic against San Diego State. I mean, that's the definition of Cinderella. The definition of Cinderella. Now, UConn ended up winning the title that year. UConn they had a great basketball team. They ended up whipping San Diego State in the final. But San Diego State, they beat Florida Atlantic, and they won that game at the last second to go to the finals, a last-second jump shot, won by 1 point. Now, I'm saying all that to say it was a great basketball game. But you go by the eyeballs, not a lot of people watched. Not a lot of people watched the Final Four either. The Final Four in general or the final game. The numbers were way down. I'm only saying that to say, well, hold on. I thought we wanted Cinderellas. That's what I keep talking about. But when there was Cinderellas actually in the Final Four, people didn't watch. People didn't like it. So it's like, what do you want? Do you want Cinderellas, or do you only want them so far? And I think that's it. I think it's like, hey, we can take a Cinderella. We want to win a couple of rounds. But sooner or later, we want the big boys to battle this thing out, to see who the national championship is. Because can you imagine if it was San Diego State, Florida Atlantic, Princeton, and St. Peter's that actually went to the Final Four? Who would have been watching that? And everybody would have said the NCAA tournament stinks. College basketball is not any good anymore. They would have come up with all these excuses other than maybe those guys were just good basketball players. And how do we know that they're good basketball players? Because the next year, the Gonzagas, the Kansas, the North Carolinas, the Kentuckys, the Arkansas, they're plucking all of those schools of their best players. That's how you know that they're good. So that's what I don't fault the big schools for doing that. It's the way the game is played these days. So you're not going to play by the rules. That's a you problem. So what is it? We had the Cinderellas in the Final Four. Nobody watched. It's incredible. And I'm like, well, dang. I guess we really don't want Cinderellas. We say we do, but we only want them so far. I really believe that that's it. You go to the next year, 2024, San Diego State, again, a mid-major in the Sweet 16. They got beat by 30. Other than that, no, nobody else. Now, you'll say a Cinderella story was NC State because of the team that they were going into the tournament. They had to win 5 games in 5 days in the ACC tournament just to qualify. If you want to count them as Cinderella, and we did, okay. If you want to count them as a Cinderella, even though they play in a big-time conference and they are a big-time school, you want to give them Cinderella status, I'll buy it, or at least I'll listen. I may not buy it, but I'll listen to you. Either way, they made it to the Final Four. But other than that, there wasn't any. Like, you can't go down the list here and see any other Cinderellas. But people watched the Final Four last year. People watched, Alabama, UConn, NC State, Purdue. People were watching. And I think more of the intrigue was, hey, let's watch this NC State team. I know it's kind of a Cinderella story, but they're from a big-time conference. Let's watch. They haven't been in the Final Four since 1983, since Jim Valvano, and they won the national championship. They haven't been back since then. Haven't actually, if we're being honest, they haven't even really been that relevant since then. So that was a good run. But again, no small school Cinderellas in the Sweet 16, other than if you want to count. San Diego State's not a small school. They're just a mid-major as far as basketball, as far as sports is concerned. So there you have it, people. Do we really want Cinderellas? I think we do. I think we like it, but we only want it for so long. When it comes down to, okay, who's going to the Final Four? Who's playing the national championship? We want to see the best basketball possible. And to me, I'm a basketball guy, so I'm going to watch it anyway. But again, when the smaller schools are winning and then the big schools come and pluck those players, how can you just say it's not good basketball when the next year they're going to be playing at your school? That's all. Just something to think about. I like to invoke some thought process and some thought-provoking from time to time, and that's kind of where I'm at with it today. It's like, hey, man, we didn't have any Cinderellas. There's people out there that believe not having Cinderellas are going to kill the identity of March Madness. I kind of believe that. But then when we get into March Madness, we only want the Cinderellas going so far. Well, where's your proof? Well, when they were in the Final Four, nobody watched. And that's the proof. That's the difference. So, and again, I don't base it off of, I call it nerd analytics and all that stuff because I'm not a big analytical guy. I think it's probably because I don't understand most of the analytics. That's why I call it nerd analytics. I'm insecure like that. But having said all of that, I don't argue with facts. And what facts are telling me, hey, when these mid-majors were in the Final Four, the numbers were the lowest they had been in decades. Well, why is that? We weren't that interested to an extent. Is that we love seeing them, but when it comes down to, okay, who's going to win the national championship, we're not interested in them winning a national championship, which is weird because you would think that a tiny school playing for a national title and even being able to win it would be kind of a national story, that people would really get behind that. Apparently they don't, people. Apparently they don't. So, or maybe it was the fan base. I don't know. But, I mean, if it's a smaller school, aren't they going to have a smaller alumni with a smaller fan base? Just throwing it out there. Either way, man, appreciate you guys, man. Let me know what you guys think of this one. I just thought, like I said, it was pretty thought-provoking on what we're doing. Hey, before we go, man, we're going to be live on Thursday afternoon at 11. The games are coming on at night, so I'm not going to get in the way of that, but we are going to do a live on Thursday. It might be Fitz. It may be just me by myself. Might be somebody else. We'll find out, but I'm going to do a live Thursday at 11 a.m. Central Time. So if you're able to join us, make sure that you do. Appreciate all you guys. We will talk to you soon.
Thank you for watching the Big 12 Insiders, your Big 12 sports show. This has been a Spirit Street production.